Thanks, Alhassan. Thank you for joining. It's nice
Thank you,
having you here.
Vikas. Yeah, it's a
And
pleasure.
so, can we start with a brief introduction about yourself?
Oh, my name is Alhassan Atama Isiaka, and I currently work as a business analyst with a company called Modus Create in the US. So Modus Create is a company that is based into consultancy services. So you expect to find all roles in the IT field, front-end developers, back-end DevOps, and so on. So I currently live in Kano, Nigeria. Kano, Nigeria is located in the northern part of Nigeria. So one of those things that I love doing outside work is basically trying to connect with peers and see how I can inspire one or two people, especially on Twitter and so on, and my personal Slack and Discord channel. Yeah, so I think this should do by now. But if
Yeah.
you need any information, then I should be glad to add up to
So,
it.
you have your personal Slack and Discord channel as well.
Yeah, sure. Just
Oh,
for
wow.
mentees, where I get to mentor, especially upcoming enthusiasts in the field of IT.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's nice. So, I've seen you have contributed a lot to the open source community thing, and
sure.
also the head of the chapter. Most of us really don't know enough about the open source community. Like, we just know that there are some people who contribute and we just use it. Like,
Yeah.
how does it work? How, is there an
Okay.
organization? How is it?
So when you say open source, definitely the mindset is broad. So it shouldn't really limit people to all about thinking about writing codes and so on. There are a lot of things people do for open source. For example, one of those selfless services rendered on YouTube channels where people get to use for free without any, like without being paid, you just consume and so on to make people's life better. That is basically open source. So however, in the formal settings, in the tech environment, we try to have a place where you keep records of this work that is being done. And one of those powerful tool uses GitHub. So in GitHub, there are a lot of contributions that you can make to GitHub. It doesn't really have to be code, like I said earlier. You can actually record poem and post it on GitHub if people get to access it and benefit to it. So another thing that I also know is there is always a project for everybody, be you front end, a back end developer, DevOps. There is always something you can always contribute to in the open source. At times, for starters, one of those things that we encourage is to probably go to a repo. There's a tag normally, which I'll be glad to share. So you normally go to repos and you see some things like some open issues. For example, maybe you see a documentation is messed up. So you can just easily make contribution. You just read the guidelines, how to make contributions. Some maybe you have to like do something we call fork, which is basically creating a copy of that repo on your own personal repo, then make changes on it and then push. So and for starters who don't really have an idea of what GitHub is, I'm sure there are a lot of courses on YouTube and other learning platforms that are made open for people to really get comfortable around using GitHub.
Okay. So, how do you contribute? Like, and where do you contribute?
Yeah, so how you contribute and where you contribute depend on your personal interests. For example, for me, I love doing a lot of front end and data science related stuffs at my spare time. So, and one of those powerful frameworks is React. So, for example, React has their own repo on Facebook, on GitHub rather. More like you can just go to React, for example, read the codes if you are good enough, and definitely you see something. You will definitely find something. These codes are written by humans, so you can check out and see if there are other issues that are opened. So normally, when there is a like a inconsistency in the coding, for example, or a bug, or something. People just go there, you open an issue, even if you don't get to address it. So opening an issue, somebody comes, read the issue, and might request for that issue to be assigned to them. And after which they get to, if you are good enough to solve that issue, then you do it and create a pull request on GitHub. And the pull request get reviewed by those moderators on the repo, and it later gets merged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, open source often goes along with Apache. Like, are they related? Like, is Apache the only open source, or how does
Sure.
it?
So
How are they
Apache,
entities?
yeah. So Apache is a project that is made open to, like the source
Mm,
codes are there, and this is something that you can easily access as well, modify and use for your own
mm,
uh, personal stuffs. However, for open source codes, they come with what we call licenses. So
mhm.
it depends. Some are personal licenses. Some gives you access for only non-commercial use. So it just depends on what the license says. But
Okay.
one thing for noobs is you see a license, for example, MIT license, and you're not really familiar, you can just easily go Google that. And definitely there's always a link to that license. So you just go through the agreement and see that the way you use that software or that tool doesn't really go against what that license explicitly states. Yeah. So
Okay.
Apache is open source too. Like it's meant open, like it's meant to be used by the public, and people can easily contribute to it as well.
Okay.
Yep.
So, so you have been contributing to UI and data.
Yes, UI, data, and any other thing. For example, for newbies, you can have a repo that gives list of, like let's say, steps to take to become a front-end engineer, for
Okay.
instance. So there is a repo that there are several repos that can tell people, like, okay, this is the guideline, and this is like a path to follow, right?
Mm,
So maybe there have been an upgrade in the curriculum. For example,
okay.
you can suggest change to that kind of repo and say, okay, I think you should add this to this, or you can add this supporting materials to this repo to make it more beneficial and more broad, so that it
Mm,
can cover the needs of more people.
okay.
Yeah.
And when did you start doing this?
Yeah, so basically I've been on GitHub for a while, and I think over 8 years on GitHub at the
Oh,
moment. So yeah, so initially it has been like I don't even know how GitHub works. First, taking a course, and you have been asked to push those courses exercise to GitHub. So that was how I started getting comfortable with GitHub, and within that period, I get to see that GitHub is a community where people write codes and so on. So this simply means I don't really have to solve a problem from ground up. If somebody has done it for me already, so there will be no need to reinvent the wheel. But rather, the best thing to do is to like make modifications that can really suit to what you're using. But one of those cool things is to be careful about plagiarism, especially giving
mhm.
credit to where you get those codes, and so on. So it's been little by little. Trust me, it's been baby steps. My
Mhm.
first contribution had to do with like correcting a spelling error in a documentation. So
Oh,
it's as
oh,
basic as that, yeah. So this is it. But and now one of those things is I have owned repos that have made open source too now, and people are free to get comfortable and contribute to it as well. So like the data contribution basically for me started late in 2019, where I had some projects on Udacity, and
okay.
I had to push those codes online for learning sake and so on. I could easily submit the codes on my system, but I really wanted to make them public. I'm sure somebody will want to take a nano degree program too, and those codes
Okay.
will be beneficial and come in handy too for them.
Great.
Yeah.
So over the 8 years, you have done quite a lot of work, and now you are the head of the South African chapter, I believe.
Yeah.
And your
So
LinkedIn profile says something like that.
yeah, Open Source Community Africa. I'm currently leading a Kano chapter in Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. So it has been a recent engagement, even though I've been doing a lot of job on the open source, but that formally is something that I wanted to start in Africa and just have a way to encourage people here to get familiar with the open source community. And one of those ways we want to do that is to basically try to use events and make awareness, create a lot of awareness in schools, organizations, and in the community at large. So we plan to do this by first hosting virtual events and maybe
Mhm.
probably in the nearest future, due to the situation of things at the moment, we
Mhm.
might try to expand for uh, physical meetups as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, I really did not know that there is a formal organization of open source community. I thought it was just each repo, some group of people handling each repo.
Yeah,
How
so
does
it
it
used
work?
Yeah, so it used to be each repo to just some group of people and so on. But the thing is, people coming up don't really have that idea that open source is something that anybody can do. You don't really have to be super smart to be able to make contributions. So, and that is why, like, a lot of tech giants, companies, try to encourage people to make this contribution. So,
Mhm.
and one of those ways to do it is to like have like sub communities. So, like the open source community Africa, for instance, it started like in 2020,
Mhm.
back then in 2019, but seriously started in 2020. And the chapter leads got engaged earlier this year in
Okay.
2021. Yeah.
Okay.
So and what like at the moment, like 4 months already into the programs, some chapters have already started hosting events and they've made a lot of impact. And there is a central Discord channel that houses a lot of these guys. Anybody that really wants to join or get more awareness on how it works can
Mhm.
also join the Discord channel. So on this channel, like there are a lot of things, like a lot of suggestions. People open new code and what they plan to achieve on that project, and maybe explain how people can make contributions to these codes. So the newbies in that channel get to be exposed to this, and they get to ask questions further, and they get information about events as well. And this is an avenue also to like advertise like job opportunities for people. And employers in the IT, what they
Mhm.
really want to look at is your portfolio and how well you do. Because anybody can really say, I'm a software developer, I do this, but it's really what you show for it. So people want to see how you write code and how you make contributions to code as well. So one thing about open source that I really love is after making contributions, you get criticized a lot. So nobody
Mhm.
wants to really merge a shitty code into their softwares, right? So
Okay.
you get maybe for the first time you get a lot of back and forth and a lot of suggestions from people. I think you should do it this way, or if you do it this way, it looks better, or use this method or some contributions
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
So if you do this 1, 2, 3 times, you personally get developed and you get familiar with how things worked, and it becomes a challenge for you. So you become a better coder, and before you be good at coding, like the more you code, the more you get better at it. And I think not only coding, I think it has to do with basically everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Okay. That is interesting. So, and professionally, you said you are working as a business analyst.
yeah, as a business analyst. And I'll tell you one interesting thing about something that I brought to that job.
Okay.
I basically write requirements depending on the project, but mostly in form of user stories.
Mhm.
And after eliciting this requirement, I translate them on a tool, mostly Jira, then coordinate daily stand-ups. And at times, I could work as a Scrum Master too, depending on if the Scrum Master is not around also, or the scope of the project. So with this in mind, there are some internal projects that we do because the organization is built with the mindset of open source. So a lot of contributions on the YouTube channel, a lot of open source codes on GitHub already, a lot of games that are being developed and given out for people to just use. So with this in mind, those internal projects, I work on one on them at the moment currently, and sometimes they need this code review, which can be a blocker to one or two tasks for somebody that is working on something. Yeah, so at times I jump in, I help review these codes, and and it's been matched. Or when maybe more experienced hand gets to review this code, then maybe I look at the review and I trust it. I just approve at the moment. So this is one of the key takeaway behind contributing to open source. That is one. Then another thing is I get to understand how things work, how the whole platform, the whole GitHub stuff, the whole unblocking people on task, and it helps me do my job better. And one of those things is to prioritize tasks, like which one should go first and so on. So understanding these technical details for me really helps me to become a better business analyst.
Yeah, that's good. So do your employers appreciate that, your contribution outside the company?
Definitely. So every single contribution that you make, like the slightest effort you make, is being appreciated in the organization. Though it's something we use internally, but we have a system that you just get to appreciate somebody on the fly at the moment, and everybody, like most people, get to see it, and you get a lot of appraisal. You get people will just clap for you and recognize you and so on. So this makes you want to do more.
That's nice. Okay, so the next point is about new students coming up. Like I've seen a lot of college students or fresh graduates. They're overwhelmed with the amount of choice that they have today. When I passed out, the only choice I had was to learn Java or C. Nothing more than that. Today they have such a wide range of options. Like how should they take it? What would be your suggestion for them?
Yeah, so one of those things that I really recommend for upcoming people and probably mentors, teachers, lecturers, or whoever impacts knowledge on coders is to really teach people how to program if they are into the tech background, if they are into learning coding, for example, how to program. So you get comfortable at using one programming language, just use it very well. Then it becomes easy to learn any other language. You can even do that by just reading documentation or how things work. So when I graduated, like you said too, it has been Java, C, C++. This was what we were taught in school, and mostly you don't really get a lot of programs to just explore. You are being confined to what you are asked to do because you don't really have much experience. I've seen some people even cram the codes, like they just cram the codes to pass. Yeah, so it's that bad.
Oh my God.
So one thing that I know is there is always a skill for everybody. Somebody might not really get comfortable around using Java, but you see them become very good JavaScript programmers. Some become very good at PHP. Some become very good in designs using CSS and so on. So there is always a tool for everybody. So I think as a newbie, one of those things that you should do is not to really learn blindly, is to really identify where your passion is in the first place. Then after that, you get a mentor. Then that mentor gets to point you in the right direction. And one thing that I had to change about myself is I had been this solo learner right from 2011. when I started coding, but I had been doing things alone, and it's actually a very wrong impression to give oneself. So one of those things to do is to really learn in a crowd, in a group of people, join a community so that you have a lot of support. So, and this is how I get to choose which language or which framework should I pick. For example, I have choices of using Angular, React, and Vue, for example. So one thing that I look at is how is the ecosystem like? What is the community like? Obviously, at the moment, React has a lot of impressions. It has a lot of developers and contributors and so on. So I'll definitely go for React because if I have issues, I need somebody to run to help resolve this issue, right? So this is how a newbie should think. But when you become so good that you become so hardcore, then you can start thinking of, yeah, I know I'm flexible. I can do things on myself. You know, if I have challenge, I should be here. So maybe then I can follow passion, right? So, but first of all is to identify what you are really good at. And at times it's a hard decision to make. Trust me, you start learning a language, you say, front end is hard. So maybe I should just start learning APIs. So you start going deep into Node and you think maybe you have to learn things like Docker and some DevOps stuff. Then you come, backend is also hard. So let me go to UI UX. The truth is everything is hard. So it depends on the mindset and the commitment that you give it and how much you practice. That is what really makes it simple. So first thing first is the passion. That passion is what really keeps you going on as a newbie, as a starter, and so on. So getting a mentor, I would always recommend that. It's really, really important. And at times you don't really have to say formally, can you be my mentor? No. Most of the good guys now don't really have time. So the best way to do it is you have GitHub, you have Twitter, and you have LinkedIn, for example, as powerful tools where you can easily get connections. So let's say I'm a starter, for instance, and I need direction. I can easily walk to Vikas. I see Vikas is a back end engineer, or he has like up to 10 years experience in the field already. So just ask the question there, like, okay, so how do I get started doing this? You know, just introduce yourself and so on. But one thing that really works well for me is asking question on the timeline. You get faster response than asking question in the DM. Yeah, so so that notification comes and nobody really wants to leave a notification hanging. Like for me personally, I just want to see all my notifications are being cleared like as fast as possible. So on Twitter, just ask that question. You can even make it as a post. Okay, so how do you get started with this and so on? Then you can start tagging people, or maybe you go to a relevant post that has to do with newbies. After making that query, then you go there and ask your question. So you get that response that you want, you record it. Maybe if you're not really sure, you can ask another person too and try to compare the two. So you notice that there are a lot of like guidelines. Okay, for front-end engineers, this is the guideline, but at times those guidelines can be so tough. I remember when I was preparing for Data Science Council of America exams in 2020, they had this long guideline which I had to go through each of those concepts. Each concept is like a knowledge on its own. So, you know, it's broad. So I had to go into them. For example, starting statistics, data analytics, visualization, machine learning, you know, deep learning, TensorFlow. So things like this, I had to start covering them one by one, and each of them might really take like maybe the learning gap could take like a month or 2 months, but I still come back. But I had my strategy for each of the concepts. For example, machine learning, I look for a challenge, more like a competition on Zindi or Kaggle, and join. Then that way I get to read and I get to refer and I get to compete with people and I get better at it. So everybody has what really works for them, right? So getting a mentor, as I was saying, it's just something that you shouldn't really formally say, I want you to be my mentor. Yeah, for some, they get lucky and it works for them, but just go ahead and just ask your question. Like ask anybody that you think you really know. And the tech community is wonderful group of wonderful people that really wants to really support. So someone might not really have the answer to the question that you seek, but might make referral for you to where you can get support.
Oh, that's nice. So for learning anything or learning a new technology, you would always uh, recommend that I look for a mentor who can guide me rather than just digging into the PDFs.
Yeah, that is one of the ways, but I think the best way to learning a new technology is to be very good at one initially. You have one that you are very strong at. And if you
Okay.
check programming languages, for example, they have most of those concepts
Yeah.
like the same. And for somebody who has a degree in computing, he will really understand that all of the design and the implementation of programming languages has to do with trade-offs. I can do it
Mm,
this way, I can do it this way, I can do it this way. But there is a cost. So what
mm,
do I want to achieve? Should I
mm,
take it this way if it favors me here? Or should I, for some languages, you have, for example, speed over, let's say the developer has to do a lot of hard work writing codes, or the implementation is done for you already in background, and you have a lot of codes going on, so the language might be slow.
mm.
So for languages like Python, I think this is one of those things they suffer, right? So for learning any technology, like
Yeah.
everybody has what really works for them, right?
Okay.
Some might really want to say, I use video. Yes, videos are cool, but one of those things that we don't really want is to be caught up in a tutorial hell. Like you watch this video, you want to watch
Yeah.
another video. So like it takes a lot of time. So after just getting the basics, the concepts, you just go ahead and start using it on the fly. Then that is how you really get better at it. But let's say you are new and you don't really have a basic idea, then one of those things we recommend is get a mentor. But there are times that you just reach that you don't really need a mentor. You can just go ahead and start doing things yourself. Then you really feel confident doing
Okay.
those things. Yeah. So the best way is to write codes. Like I have learned a new concept today. Let me check on GitHub. Is there anywhere I can apply that concept that I really learned? So this is one of those things.
Okay. So I learn something and then try to apply it. While I apply
Exactly.
it, I'll face more problems. Then I'll search for the solution, and then I can
Exactly.
learn more and more.
Exactly. And some people might say, okay, do I really need to do a personal project also? Yeah, personal projects work, but you don't really have to follow the natural convention like the to-do app, water drinking app, reminders, and so on. One of those things that I can do is to, like, I use Twitter so much, and I try to see, okay, how about I'm not active today? Can I schedule my tweets? Yeah, it's about, okay, let me read the Twitter API and see what it has. I have some knowledge on Node already. So I go to Twitter API, read the documentation and so on. I try to apply it and say, okay, I have some tweets. Can it fetch those tweets from a spreadsheet, for example? Can it communicate with a spreadsheet, pick those tweets and just tweet at this particular moment? This is something that can be done. So another thing is to like say, okay, this is how my schedule works, or this is how my reading schedule works. Can I write a software or something to make it better for me? It doesn't really have to be a very complex system. It could be something very simple. And at the end of the day, you start upgrading it. When I was learning Android, I remember the first software I wrote was a memo app. I use diary a
Mhm.
lot, so much. So let me try to automate what I write in my diary and so on. It was the basic crud, like, okay, create a post. I made a mistake here, edit and delete.
Mhm.
So later I started adding things like reminders, notifications, and so on, and making the UI better. So this is how to learn.
Okay. But often I've seen people start with a project and midway they feel that no, this is not getting anywhere. They dump it, they take up another project. And over
Yeah.
or a period of time they feel frustrated that I have not completed anything.
Well, so it's really common among tech guys, lots
Okay.
and lots of abandoned projects and lots of maybe abandoned domains as well. I have
Okay.
an idea and I want to create a product and so on. Yeah. So one thing is like ask yourself, why do I even need to start this project? Is it because I want to learn? Then have goals, short-term goals and long-term goals. This is what I want to achieve. Then try as much as possible to break the bigger goal into smaller wins. So, and those wins really encourage you to do more. But when you try to look at the project as a whole or in a bulk, you really get overwhelmed, and this can be a problem. This is why a lot of projects are being abandoned. And that is why I said start small, get something that works, then start enhancing them like little by little as you learn. And if you have challenge, don't just pause, because this is one of the biggest problems I faced. I had a challenge with my Android. It has to do with the runtime of Android Gradle that keeps upgrading then. So I ran into an issue with Gradle then, and I abandoned it. Like, it was frustrating, you know. So, but there are people who use these things every day. So reach out, like probably ask questions and so on. And this is where a mentor come in handy. They might not really solve the problem for you, but they can show you how to get the problem solved.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, the next about the future, like, are you planning some kind of a product for yourself, or you plan to contribute to the open source, continue in the open source? Do you have any product in mind?
Yeah, so at the moment, I already have a personal product. It's in a private repo, which I use for myself. But one of those codes that I really wanted to make open was to solve a local challenge that we face in Kano, Nigeria. So I've been making a lot of research on how to curb these traffic issues. So if I can know that there is traffic in an area or a congestion in an area, I can easily take another route. So people use Twitter so much, like every day. So I felt, okay, how about using something as basic as telling people that this is the situation in this area, right? So this was one way I looked at it. So I could get a central database source or central source for information like Google Sheets, then maybe have multiple agents to manage feeds on this sheet, right? So, and as the sheets get updated, maybe there's a bot that is written that can tweet or post on LinkedIn that this is the traffic situation in this area, right? So yeah, so this is how I was looking at it then. But there are several other like ideas that I kept having already. The repo is bootstrapped already, but I'm trying to make research so that I will not end up reinventing the wheel. Like, maybe there is already, like in my research, I found out that Google uses something already to see if there is a motion in an area or congestion in an area as well. But people don't really get to use Google much, right? People use Google, yes, but people don't really get to use Google Map often as the way people get active on social media applications like, for example, Twitter, LinkedIn. So if we can get updates in that way, then this is something to do. Then maybe probably in the long run, this is something that can be extended and say, okay, you make people have SMS notifications also.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That is nice. So it was nice talking to you. It was a lot of interesting points that you have shared with us.
Same here.
I'm
I'll
sure
do
our
this
audience
any
will
day,
develop a lot.
anytime. Yeah, sure.